with the introduction. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and I'll leave you the floor or the screen to you. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ruben. So hello and welcome everyone to our Around the World webinar series, which is organized by the Marie Curie Alumni Association, MCAA, and which also takes place every second Friday of every month. So for those who are new to our platform, the MCAA is an international non-profit organization that currently houses over 21,000 members from across 151 countries, with 35 geographical chapters and 10 thematic working groups. It is established and supported by the European Commission, but run entirely by volunteer members with a bottoms-up approach. We have created the Around the World webinar series to bring together scientists and researchers from across the globe to share their insights on a broad range of topics that connect different sciences, research, technology, and policy initiatives intersecting with societal and environmental issues. Today's webinar focuses on the theme of citizen science and how we can make the best use of citizen science for our research, for which the Marie Curie Alumni Association is collaborating with our partner organizations from the European Citizen Science Project, including European Citizen Science itself, Learning Planet Institute, and Paris Cité University. I'd also like to take this opportunity to briefly introduce the MCAA's ECS team. We have Dr. Mustafa Munir Shorov, who is also the project leader for MCAA ECS project. I am Pooja. I'm also a project officer for the MCAA ECS project. As you all know, we have Ruben Riosa, who is the communications manager for MCAA. Who has very diligently helped us organize today's event. Thanks, Ruben. And we also have Dr. Insia Irfani, who is also a project officer working mostly on the policy impact and recommendation work related to the ECS project. As Ruben mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and would be published later on MCAA's YouTube channel. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Ms. Claudia Cartas, who is also the project manager for ECS and a project officer for European Citizen Science Association, to give a brief introduction on the ECS project. Her session would be followed by a short Q&A session, so please feel free to post your questions in the chat box. Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pooja, and welcome everyone that is joining us at the meeting today. I'm going to share my presentation. Okay, so let's go. Thank you, Pooja, for introducing me. I'm Claudia Fabó Cartas, and I work at EXA. So we'll be telling you a bit about the ECS project today. ECS, that stands for European Citizen Science, and the goal that we have in the project is to widen and strengthen the European citizen science community. We do that through capacity building and awareness raising activities. And we do that with a vision of a globally connected, inclusive, and strong citizen science community for societal change in Europe. So some details about the project. Some of you might be familiar with EU-funded projects. This project in particular is a coordination and support action. So we have a strong role in building the community and especially capacity building. And you see below here next to the orange dot, the topic to which this project responds, which is a capacity building and brokering network to make citizen science an integral part of the European research area. And hence why we are presenting the project to you today, since you also have an important role in this. And this project, as you'll hear about a bit during my short presentation, has elements of citizen science, because we do citizen science activities ourselves, but it is also about our own citizen science, and this relates to this aspect of the being a coordination and support action, meaning that we are doing a big effort to build infrastructure and capacity to be able to carry out citizen science. So you see here the project at a glance. We are a 4-year-long project, and we are just over a year into the project, and we have a consortium, a big one, that brings together 12 partners and 9 affiliated entities in 15 countries. And we are also setting up a network of 28 citizen science ambassadors that will help us spread the word and raise awareness about citizen science in Europe and connect the community, which is one of the main goal, as you heard. So here, very shortly, you see an overview of all of the partners and the affiliated entities. And now I will dive into more concretely in what we are doing in the project. So what ECS does, as I mentioned this one, we're expanding the reach of citizen science by strengthening the community. So reaching out to both those that are already involved in citizen science and strengthening the links there, but also reaching out and bringing in new audiences, or what we could call newcomers to citizen science. That's where some of you might come into play, but also we aim to reach out to small and medium enterprises, public libraries, and other actors. Another thing the project does is to enhance the digital skills for FAIR and open science communities. In case you're not familiar, FAIR, the way it's written in here, stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data, because building community in this field is also a big aspect of relevant for citizen science. Then next up, we are further developing the EU Citizen Science platform through co-design. And if not now or later in the chat, we'll post the link to the EU Citizen Science platform in case you are not familiar with it. And here we also want to include the community, and that's why we are developing new services through co-design to hear different voices and needs. Another big thing we are developing in the project is the ECS Academy, that will contain free training to increase the capacity to conduct citizen science. And we have the colleagues leading this work here with us today, Muki and Clea. The project aims to boost inclusion and diversity for mainstreaming citizen science. This is a cross-cutting topic that is addressed in several of the activities that we do. And more towards impact, we focus on policy impact and are advocating for citizen science among policymakers and stakeholders. But we are also investigating the impact of the project and of citizen science more generally on research, society, and the economy. So we'll go now into some more details without trying to be exhaustive, but you see here some of the target audiences that we have. So as I mentioned, citizen science practitioners, so those that are already involved, in the ambassadors, those that use the platform, but you see here also researchers, such as early career researchers, Maria Slodowska Career Action funded projects and researchers, and ERC also funded projects and researchers. And you see that the list is a bit more extensive. It includes developers, focusing on this aspect of improving data skills, policymakers, the libraries, and the industry that I was mentioning. And so here you have a bigger, one second, I have to change my view. Yeah, you have here a bit bigger aspects of the project on terms of infrastructure, which I mentioned is an important element of the project. We have the citizen science platform, which it's open source code and an API to connect to other platforms. API stands for Application Programming Interface. So other platforms speak to each other, let's say. We aim to connect with e-infrastructures such as the EOS, the European Open Science Cloud Marketplace later on. And the Academy is a big one to build the capacity to conduct excellent research and innovation. Now moving on to capacity building, we here have also the Academy. The idea is that we provide either training through the Academy and other activities in the project, or to empower others to be able to carry out the citizen science activities they wish, so that they have more tools to do so. And part of it is here enhancing digital skills for implementing data acquisition, analysis, and visualization. We will organize in the projects hackathons and datathons and training for developers. Yeah, and you see here another part of this capacity building is focused on inclusivity and empowerment, which are really important topics in citizen science and important in the work we do to really try to be as inclusive as possible. And when we talk about citizens or in the community, to think about everyone that this entails. So a bit linked to this, we have co-design and collaboration. As I mentioned, the platform will continue to be developed through co-design and have new services. So only as an idea for you of what that service could be, for example, in case you've visited the EU Citizen Science platform, the visualization map, this is new. Services such as this one. The Academy is also a big effort from the community, and our colleagues are engaging a network of trainers and educators in citizen science to identify training needs and resources and identify the services that the Academy would target to respond to the needs. And also, and this has not started yet, policy recommendations to include citizen science in policy agendas and also as part or contributing to open science will be co-designed with policymakers and funders. And here, last but not least, the aspect of inclusion and community building, where we have the network of ambassadors, pilots with public libraries and small and medium enterprises, then some pilots in ongoing citizen science projects to address inclusiveness in already running projects. So yeah, as I mentioned before, inclusion is cross-cutting. And I think this was the last of my content slides. I hope this could give you a bit of a glimpse of the project. It has many moving pieces and it's a big project, but I hope that this could pique your interest in case you want to learn more about it. And I think I would leave it here and stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Claudia. Ruben, do we have any questions from the listeners?
At the moment, no question from the chat.
Okay, then Claudia, if I may ask, if researchers present here or elsewhere want to access the resources on the EXA website, do they have to register, become part of EXA, or are they freely available CS resources?
Yeah, so EXA is the association. This is separate from the platform, even if EXA manages the platform. On the EU Citizen Science platform, there's many listed resources that can be filtered by different topics and interests and so on. Everyone, without being an EXA member and without having an account on the platform, can access those. But if you register to the platform and become a user, you can bookmark them so that you can easily find them later, or even if you're working on citizen science, you can create profiles to submit your own resources. And the same with the training in the Academy. It's right now some things are in development, but it's open. So some people would have to register, but a name and an email address is enough, and then it's open, accessible to everyone.
Okay, that's brilliant. And how often are CS ambassadors elected, and how can the researchers apply for ambassadorship?
This was a one-time thing. Then we issued a call last May, and it ran through June. We have, from this network of 28 ambassadors, we have now actively engaged 23. So we are missing 5, I'll say missing, but we would like to have ambassadors in 5 more countries. Thank you, Simona, for posting the list. You see where Simona posted the ambassadors that we already have in the network. So those in the countries that are missing, I can say it's Austria, Germany, Estonia, Slovakia, and Sweden can have their eyes peeled, because we'll be issuing the second and hopefully then the last round in the next few weeks.
That's great. And do we have any more questions for Claudia in the audience? Please feel free also to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask something directly.
I will also be staying the rest of the event, so if anything comes up later, I can answer in the chat too.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Claudia. So I think now, if you don't have any further questions, we can move on to the researchers' pitches, and I'd like to invite Claire. Claire is a research assistant working for the Learning Planet Institute, and also together with Professor Mickey Harkley. Claire, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Right. To present the ECS Academy. Or
to introduce the researchers.
The researchers.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right. Let me. Sorry, I will just find the list again of who's first.
We did publish the agenda on the
yeah, that's true.
chat as well.
That's true. Great. Let me just diligence in my work. Right. I won't do justice right now to the researchers, but I will present them. So first of all, there's Florence Cognac that has done her PhD on using participatory science on air quality monitoring. And then there will be Baptiste Rossier also doing at the moment entering his PhD using participatory science with a citizen science project called Sciences à l'appel here at Université Paris Cité. And then we have Amélie that will join us shortly, who is doing her PhD and finalizing it at the moment at INSERM at an institute in Paris. And she also has done use or participatory research in the field of urban planning and also the perspective of trees by citizens. So yeah, Florence. And please don't hesitate to introduce yourself a bit better in case.
Thank you for the presentation. I don't know who is starting. Is it because I thought I was third, but I can start as you prefer. Yeah. All right. So I will. Okay. So I will share my screen now. Second. Okay. All right, so well, I think, thank you, Claire, for the presentation. So yeah, my name is Florence, and I'm trained as an environmental geographer and epidemiologist. So I received my PhD last year in 2022 in environmental epidemiology, which is a branch of biomedicine. And yeah, my research topic was focusing on the effects of air pollution on brain health. And I've used quite extensively citizen science during my PhD. And I enjoyed it so much that I decided to leave academia to work for a company that works on multi-stakeholder engagement. So using participatory approaches and co-creation processes with scientists, researchers, and citizens. Right, so for this short pitch, I wanted to present the Cities Health Project, which was really at the heart of my PhD thesis. More specifically, the Barcelona pilot, because it was a project where different cities were doing pilots, and this is where I was working on the Barcelona one. And it's very simple. The way we wanted to engage citizens in our project was in each phase of a research study. So it was quite ambitious, meaning that citizens had to co-define the research question, co-design the study, collect data, co-analyzing the data, and so on. So as you can imagine, it was quite ambitious, but very enriching experience. So when we started the project, we wanted to work on air pollution, but we didn't know what was the research question. We wanted to define it with the citizens. So the first thing we did was a pop-up intervention to start identifying the concerns citizens had regarding this topic. So this pop-up intervention was conducted in all the city of Barcelona. And then once we had more or less the concerns listed, we organized a few community meetings. So it was a little bit more intimate to formulate those concerns into research questions. Also a very interesting meeting as well. And once we had the favorite research question, we started a workshop to co-design the study, or if you're more familiar with the term research protocol. This was probably one of my favorite workshops, where we define key aspects of the research protocol so that they are, let's say, more aligned with the interests and the preferences of our participants. So for instance, when we're talking about air pollution, there are many ways of measuring air quality exposure. For example, we can ask participants to wear a tube for a week, or we can ask them to use a monitor that they place in their house for 2 months. So we really gauge with them what they preferred and what they were interested in using. So we did this workshop, and once we had the research protocol all accepted by the ethical committee, we started doing user experience and testing session with our citizens, not just with scientists. So that's very important. It was very key in developing our studies, is that we were really making sure that our research protocol was making sense to our citizens and participants. And we also did workshops to co-analyzing data. We already had an idea of how we wanted to analyze data, but we asked our participants, what could be the extra analysis we could do with the data we collected? Also a very challenging workshop to do. So I have to be fast, of course, but if you're interested to replicate similar methodologies or activities that we have conducted in the Cities Health Project, I highly recommend this paper. I wrote it basically because I thought at this time that there was a need for a more detailed description of methodologies, that how researchers, how can we implement citizen science in our study? More specifically, really, like, what could be the activities in the methodology? So that's a very interesting paper if you want to replicate things I've just mentioned. And about added values of incorporating citizen science into my PhD project, I will try to go fast because I know I only have 5 minutes. But the first one is to provide, it provides you with information that is usually not accessible to you. And this one, I really want to highlight it because I was impressed how my participants could explain very peculiar data patterns that I had that I couldn't explain myself. I give you a very short example. I had a participant who, when I look her exposure to air quality, it was very, very abnormal in the sense that it was very good air quality. And to me, it wasn't making sense. She was living in Barcelona in a, it didn't make sense, the data. So I did ask her, I did talk to her a bit more about, you know, how could you explain this result? And she was telling me that she was living near a green space that I couldn't identify through a map, actually. I don't know why this data didn't appear. And she told me that she was working in a flower shop. So it explained a bit why she had such a low exposure to air pollution. And actually, she was not an outlier to my research. Actually, I reused her data in a different way. Another added value to your project, to my project, it enhances the sustainability of your research, and it creates a certain legacy to your community. So I had this feeling that I was not just providing scientific publication, but I was giving something to my participants, which is, for example, data, the codes to analyze those data, but also any tools that we use throughout the project to come up with that research study. Now I know that some participants still after a year are reusing those tools. And another added value that to me, well, this is a very personal experience, but it's definitely, if you decide to add citizen science into your research, it's definitely an opportunity to be intellectually challenged as a researcher and in your area of expertise, basically because citizens will ask you so many fundamental basic questions that sometimes you just take for granted. You know, you take for granted the methodologies that you're using, and you don't really think about the rationale behind it, no? So definitely that was a very nice experience to solidify my knowledge as a young scientist. And yeah, I'm really sold to citizen science, as you can see. So that's it. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you very much, Florence, for sharing that. And please don't hesitate to kind of drop questions in the chat. We won't have any discussions now, but later on. And now to make you justice, Baptiste will come on board. And so just to properly introduce him, he's a PhD student and did his master's in biotechnology and in agroparitech. Go ahead. Go ahead. We can't hear you, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Good.
Amazing. Sorry for this. So, yep, let's... Okay, can you see the screen also?
Yes. So
okay, amazing. So thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so I'm a new PhD student in a lab in Paris, where we try to mix participatory approaches in order to speed up the discovery of novel antibiotics. So just a brief context about what we're doing. Antimicrobial resistance, as you may know, is a major public health threat that already causes 1.2 million deaths a year. And while bacteria become more and more resistant to antibiotics, the antibiotic discovery pipeline is basically drying and fails to provide novel antibiotics. And this leaves us completely defenseless against this new pandemic, this new threat. So I think there is hope because bacteria are historical producers of antibiotics. If you take streptomyces, for instance, they produce around 2/3 of the antibiotics that are commonly used in medicine. And in fact, we only know one portion of the molecules that they can produce. They have in their genomes recipes for novel compounds, and only 3% of them have been studied so far, which means there is a vast reservoir of potential novel antibiotics still in their genomes. And that's why we're interested in our lab. We want to develop a fast and parallelized pipeline to explore this untapped biosynthetic potential. And everything starts with the collection of soil samples. We isolate some bacteria from the soil, and we then identify the genes that are inside. If we find some interesting genes or recipes, we clone it, and we express them in order to find novel compounds, novel antibiotics. But in fact, in this pipeline, there's several bottlenecks that prevent us from scaling up. And we think that an efficient approach to address those bottlenecks is to use participatory approaches. For instance, one of our first questions was, how can we provide enough biodiversity to our pipeline? We needed different soil samples and a diversity of soil samples. But so the first solution we had was to go ourselves outside and find some soils, basically. But it was pretty inefficient and biased in a way that we were not accessing remote areas, or we were accessing still the same places every time. So we wanted to crowdsource this problem and address this bottleneck via sourcing this microbial diversity via participatory science. So we made a 2-month campaign called La Science à l'appel, where we asked citizens to collect soil samples and send them to us. So 300 citizens participated. They collected around more than 1,000 soil samples, from which we isolated around 6,000 bacteria. And only by looking at a fraction of them, we already identified 66 novel recipes for potential novel molecules that we are currently investigating in the lab, which will make those molecules the first crowdsourced antibiotics, let's say. And so we were pretty surprised that people were, wanted to participate in this approach, but it was also super powerful. So how did we implement these projects? At the beginning, it was the first time in the lab we were implementing such approach. It was really hard for us to identify what would be the key bottlenecks or challenges. And hopefully we're part of a network where we could discuss with other citizen science experts. And that was decisive in how we could implement this project. So at the beginning, we basically, with friends or other scientists, we established some methods, robust methods, let's say, to collect soil samples easily. And we identified which type of data we wanted to collect and how consistent we wanted them to be. And then once this process were ready, we reached the citizens through the press, mostly via the press, so France Inter, Le Figaro, for instance. And then we enabled the soil collection efficiently with tutorials and the use of an app. But we realized that the app was probably not the best suited way because it's sometimes hard to connect to the app. It's hard to use in remote areas. So by collecting citizens' feedback during this campaign, we were able to improve our data collection and the tools that we were using. And we are at the stage of the project where we provide results to the citizens, mostly via websites and an interactive map, and also via newsletter to keep them engaged. And you can see, by the way, in the bottom of this slide, some bacteria that we managed to isolate, and some of them may produce some antibiotics. So, in fact, we realized that participatory sciences in our field was very precious and could really speed up or scale up science projects, and while keeping citizens informed about what is going on about antimicrobial resistance. And it gave us also a lot of knowledge and methodologies, introduction to methodologies. And we think that those tools are so powerful that we would like to engage the citizens even deeper in our pipeline. For instance, we are developing a practicum in universities to engage students into isolating strains and finding potentially novel antibiotics. So they are screening right now some strains for their biosynthetic potential. And we would like also in the future to gamify some data analysis. We produce a lot of genomic data that needs at some point to be curated also. And we would like to gamify this approach to involve the citizens deeper into our pipeline. With that, I think, yeah, I'll thank everyone that participated to the project. And if you're interested by this project approach and the results, I invite you to have a look to the Sciences à l'Appel website. And if you have also any questions or things, be happy to discuss with you by email or later on. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Baptiste. Now I'd like to introduce Amélie Dacouret, who is a PhD student at the Université Jean Moulin Lyon 3, and also affiliated to CNRS. And yeah, the floor is yours, Amélie.
Thank you very much. So I just have a little problem with I can't share my screen. So that's going to be a little problem. I just have to disconnect myself and then come back because I feel that the computer is not allowed to share oh, perhaps it worked, no.
Could we help in another way? You'd like to send me the link? Would you like me to share the screen?
Yeah, I'm just going to share it with you by.
We can't hear you anymore. So maybe you're muted. Just a moment. I can't hear you, Amélie.
Sorry, I just sent it to you on the chat if you received it.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
See. I haven't received it. Ah, got it. Perfect.
All right, perfect. Because that's the first time that I'm using Zoom with this computer. We used it different.
Yeah. Great. Then we're just going to ask you a few moments. Please, if you have any questions.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, I can
go
jump in because I've seen in the chat a comment, which is not really a question, but I think it's really interesting to all of you, is that Quentin mentioned that, thank you for your presentation. We are a consortium working on establishing co-creation as a public health method. So Health Cascade is the name of the project. And imagine that it looks like the only difference in our both processes is the final product, and citizen science aims producing knowledge, where co-creation in our situation aims to produce a product solution. So if it definitely thought that we might have an interest in sharing some of our results on methods, tools, and experience. So I think that this is really a great comment. And yeah, Quentin, if you want to get in touch with someone from ECS project, I mean, feel free, and I'm sure that you can make even better and grow your project and find new partners. So yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And for a question from myself, generally, either to Baptiste or Florence or to Emily, it's just a general question. How difficult have you find in your career that in general to engage with citizens? Is it like difficult? Are we really willing to support your project or participate? Are we more scared to jump into a science project kind of thing? Well, what is your general feeling about it?
I can answer a little bit on this. First, we had the chance to be able to reach citizens via the press and also via the antimicrobial resistance. That is a topic that really interested citizens. Like from the emails we get or the feedback we got, they were pretty interested to by a simple action of collecting soil sample to be able to participate in a broader picture to solve a public health tasks. And from what we got, that was what interested the most. So yeah, that's what we got. That's why we get that level of engagement for us. And
yeah, perhaps I can just jump in because I think it's an interesting question as well, in the sense that I think you will find participants with different levels of participation in your project. You will have some that are very engaged in our project. We were calling them community champions. So those that were very involved from the start of the project to the end. And you have some that maybe are just are just curious to know what's the project about, or participate to only one workshop because they are interested or they have someone that they know in this workshop. But I won't say it's easy, but you have to be aware that people join your project for very different reasons. And so by knowing this, then you have to attract them. You have to address different motivation. Yeah.
Thanks.
And I just, if I can answer too, I tried several things to attract their attention. Well, that's in my presentation, but that's a main point, to mobilize people and to mobilize people during several months or several weeks, because everyone has a lot of things to do. So it's a real question to mobilize inhabitants to those projects. But it is possible. It really is possible, and they're all. I totally agree with Florence. They're all coming for several reasons, and they like to learn. They like to also share moments with other people. They like to meet people. So it's very important to organize some social events around all of those research projects or larger projects.
Very nice. Thank you very much. I have your presentation ready, so we can jump on that, and then afterwards continue with the questions. Right. I'll follow you with the next.
Right, perfect. Thank you very much for this invitation and this opportunity to present my work. So my PhD is entitled Participatory System Combining Town Planning and Science, referred as the 2PSCT. So my name is Amélie Dacouré. I'm a PhD student in Geography and Land Use Planning at the Université Jean Moulin Lyon 3. I started my PhD in 2021, and I should complete it at the end of 2024. So my supervisor, or the professor Lise Bourdeau-Lepage, who is a professor in Geography and Land Use Planning, and the Dr. Jean-Yves Georges, who is a senior researcher in ecology and ecophysiology at the National Center of Scientific Research in Strasbourg, France. And this research is conducted with the collaboration of Sébastien Arlot, who is a project director at the Parisian firm in Fabrique de l'Être. So if you just can move to the other part. Thank you very much. So just to very briefly explain to you how what led me to this research project, I very briefly would outline my academic background. So the main discipline I am rooted in is Geography and Land Use Planning. So, but as I always wanted to explore how other disciplines are approaching issues that our societies and our territories are facing, I wanted to pursue my training with a master in human ecology and then a master in urban ecology. And over the years, and as I have learned, it has become clear to me that, just the other one, no, sorry. Yeah, perfect. It has become clear to me that participatory process is a transversal necessity. Just had another click, sorry. Thank you. So just as I showed it on the shim, it's participatory process is at the center of international ecological governance, biodiversity conservation, and urban governance through the Agenda 21, urban consultation, participatory natural resource science. Have a click, sorry. Thanks. So what I wanted to study is I wanted to study urban local ecological governance as an open opportunity to develop democratic innovation and meet two main challenges that cities have to face now as they're facing a lot of environmental issues, is to mobilize people to commit to a urban consultation process and to enhance city dwellers' nature experience and to preserve green spaces and urban trees as cities are facing in Highland and other climate changes. So just another click, sorry, there's a lot of clicks. Thanks. And so the main question is, does the integration of participatory sciences into our urban consultation process help to improve consultation and overcome the phenomenon of always the same participants? So by considering this experimentation, because that's an experimentation, as participatory research, we decide to elaborate a system a new governance system that combines urban tree census with the consultation as part of the revision of the local urban plan in Paris, France. So just can click. So that's what I said. Just can click on that. Thank you. So this participatory research is configured around 5 main stages. So never click stop, please. Thanks. So the first part is stage 1, stage 3, stage 5. It's the main goal was to elaborate, to ask them to fill questionnaires and to participate with me to interviews to gain information on participant motivations. So that was this question that you asked before on how to motivate people. So that was my main question too. I asked them, why are you here? Like what motivates you? I wanted also to know what they discovered around during those different stages. And I wanted them to share with me, share with us their feedback on the 2PSCD system that we elaborate, so that the system, the governance system, and allow us to evaluate it and to share our learnings with them also. So just like Florence said, I also wanted to share with them something, to give them something, and not just to collect data, and that's all. So that was very important to me to share learnings and also to, as I said, organize social events around this when I wanted to share with them some learnings and analysis that I could do with with all the data that I could collect. So another click, please. Thank you very much. And on the other side, so you have stage 2 and stage 4, which are define the pilot project of this governance system that I wanted to experiment. And so I linked to the census and identification of human trees to preserve them. So it's participatory science here. And so I asked them to identify and photograph trees, urban trees, and to register their photographs on a platform organized by the CAU in Paris, which is an observatory, the Parisian Trees Observatory. And then I asked them to participate to the consultation as part of the local urban plan revision in Paris. So that's participatory urbanism. And to create a kind of a picture and to better understand what I wanted to do there, I like to and another click stop, please. Well, thanks. I like to say that on one part there is the backstage, so stage 1, stage 3, stage 5, where I ask what are their motivation, how they consider trees in their city, and what they know about urbanism, what they want, etc., etc. That's the backstage. That's what I call the backstage. And and the pilot project of this governance that we wanted to experiment is the front stage. The front stage. So yeah. Another click, please, thanks. And so the learnings so far that we could identify is for the participatory science, it's 83% of participants motivated by the preservation of remarkable trees. So what motivates them to participate to the whole governance system is to, well, experiment is the fact that the goal was tree preservation in their city, and Paris need a lot of trees now. So. And the other one is how, all right, so it's something that motivates you, but how are you considered trees? How trees are considered to become a democratic mobilization lever, to also contribute to the urban consultation. And another click, please. And so it also helped us to, and the city staff to reporting the presence of trees, even in private space, because we can't go in private space because that's forbidden. Another click, please. Thank you. And that also, it was an opportunity to share our learning with participants and to democratize information. So that was a main point that my colleagues here also said. And it was very important to us too to find out if, when participants were disturbed by an element of the system, because the goal is to evaluate the system and to propose at the end of this research to create another version of this governance system, thanks to all our participant contribution. Here, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation, already. All right, I believe that now the floor is Muki's.
Thank you for the presentation. It's great to see all these new and interesting projects that are happening in the space of citizen science. So I'll take a bit of wider overview on citizen science and kind of also point out that it's got a part in frontier research, and that's based on a talk that I gave in an ERC event actually a year ago. So kind of what is all this thing, and that's might answer some of the questions that was raised in the chat. There is one way within the European Commission Research and Development, there is actually a very wide definition of citizen science. It's seeing it as a voluntary participation of non-professional scientists in research and innovation in different stages of the process, a different level of engagement. So within this definition, also even shaping the research agenda, so being in a consensus conference about designing future research, or what's called patient and public engagement or involvement, participatory research, all these things a lot of time fall within the concept of citizen science. And that concept is also fitting wider agenda. So one thing that happened in the past 2 years is the adoption of the UNESCO recommendation on open science. And what is interesting is that if some of you heard about open science, a lot of time you hear about the 2 quarters of this pie that are coming from the scientific side, such as open access, open data, using open source tool, sharing information, and creating infrastructure for that. But actually, UNESCO is highlighting that there are 2 societal aspects to open science. One of them is having an open dialogue with other knowledge systems. So thinking about marginalized scholars and giving them space within the system, having indigenous people presenting their knowledge and treating this knowledge in a respectful way. And within the open engagement, within the practice of science research, we can have science volunteering or crowdsourcing or citizen and participatory science in the language of UNESCO. So you see that also at that level, there is now strong involvement within that. And if you go to the UNESCO website, you'll find guidelines on how institutions can adopt it. And that means that we see increasing interest by different actors within the research and innovation system in contributing and in supporting citizen science. So last year and just ended up early this year, there was a mutual learning exercise between research and innovation systems across Europe, so different member states, thinking, how can we support it? And one of the results of this thing is that we're now seeing specific calls for citizen science that are coming up in different systems. So in France, we've seen one, another one is coming in Romania, countries that weren't participating in this, like the Netherlands, will come up soon. And what is important to all of you to remember that those perceptions of citizen science are wide, which means that when you're doing participatory research, you can say that your research is citizen science and you can integrate it. You shouldn't have a very narrow understanding. And that's because citizen science is also a very, very wide practice. So within citizen science, you can find different activities in different areas. For example, there are parts of scientific research that always engage the public, like in ecology and biology. But even in that area, you always have, people helping ornithologists to collect data, and you have activities like in the UK, 1 hour a year exploring the data. But it's important to know that this can be and should be frontier research. The reason is that no researchers can be everywhere all the time. And by having a wide network of volunteers, you actually can do things that you wouldn't be possible to do with your research budgets or with your research abilities. And within even activities that engage children, there is a good record of the changes of bird observations in the UK over the year that is contributing to international assessment. Or another one within the area of citizen science is when people download software on their computer or their smartphone, and while they don't use it or while the smartphone is being charged, the computing power is supporting researchers. And again, that leads to new research. So for example, nowadays it's common to hear about attribution studies. So studies that tell you, oh, this storm is very likely because of climate change. But when the attribution studies started, the researchers that involved in it couldn't get and still have some limitations on how much they can access the supercomputers that are being used for climate change modeling. So they went out to the public and asked them to join in, and over 60,000 people joined into the climate prediction net, which led to these attribution studies, early attribution studies, and demonstrated that it's possible to do that and to promote the research. And another example that you see on the right is the research that came out immediately when the COVID-19 appeared, that allow researchers to crunch different aspects of the DNA in order to understand potential of drugs and so on. Or there is volunteer thinking, where people are contributing with their cognitive ability. And again, part of it is led by the scientists, asking, for example, in one of the first projects in this area already 10, 15 years ago, it was giving people images and asking them to classify it according to what scientists want. But researchers also get into new discoveries. So this is an example of one of the volunteers, Hanni von Erkel, who spotted the image that you see on the right, the kind of green frog image of a galaxy. And she didn't let go. She asked the scientist what it is. And in the end, this object, which called Hanni's thing, or in Dutch is voorwerp, became called after her and been recognized as a new discovery. And there were other new discoveries that made with collaboration between the scientists and the volunteers on such platforms. So because you have multiple eyes looking at images, you can have new discoveries. And Also, there are new innovations in the whole area of biohacking or the DIY science, where people are either developing new instruments for analyzing DNA, and you can get into new resources and you can experiment in new ways, or you can have new ideas. And in some cases, we have evidence of new instrument being developed through that as in different ways. So what you need to understand is that citizen science can work in different ways. It can be sometimes as a way in which we ask people, download software, do something, and you are helping science. And people are very happy to do that, even in very large numbers. You can have distributed intelligence where they are helping in interpreting or collecting data, but we can get into more and more participatory way where we allow things to work in the same way that we just heard from Emily in her presentation. And finally, we can see the collaborative science and the problem definition. And Florence, of course, was also on the participatory to the extreme version of it. It's called extreme because basically that's the extremities of citizen science. Once you pass the responsibility and the control to the community, you have reached the end. So I'll give you an example from a project that I finished last year, funded by the ERC. And that was looking at engaging different communities in collecting data. The work itself is trying to engage communities in doing bottom-up activity where they collect the information and they decide and have a lot of control over the data collection and work within their different cultures. Where it happens in a lot of time in indigenous or forest community. This is an example from Cameroon, where we start engaging with the communities through a free and prior informed consent. That's a process where people are discussing what data will be collected, how it will be collected, who it is shared with, and what it will be used for. And in this case, you see my co-director of the Extreme Citizen Science Group, Dr. Jerome Lewis, kind of talking with a community and establishing the community protocol in the area of resource management and recording resources in order to work with logging companies to protect them. So after this process of agreeing if the community want to be involved, there is a process of deciding what will be collected, and that is done through pictorial representation. And if one of the things is not good enough or it's missing, drawing can be added on the spot, and you can see different fruit, different habitation, and cultural aspects that are being collected, and they are being grouped. Once that is set, we have developed a software called Sapely, which is totally pictorial, and it allows people to record this information, but more importantly, for the anthropologists and for the intermediaries who work in the field to be able to move from the images that you've seen that can be discussed, the physical images, and then share them into a form of an application within an overnight. So then that what you get, and this is an example from dealing with illegal poaching, a screen where you have different categories of aspects, and what you see there is a picture of an elephant, a dead elephant that was found, and then asking, okay, what will be collected? Dead elephant, dead gorilla, dead pangolin. Is it something that you just found blood on the ground, or maybe you found a trap? After that, you can take a picture or recorded audio, then it records the location, and finally it can be approved, and it's either stored on the phone until the phone reaches the area where it's covering on the internet, and then it's shared upward, or it's stored on the phone, or it's immediately sent up if the connection exists. And after setting it up, the information is then being shared, and we train the people that are working with it, and then go out to do data collection, which a lot of time happen in groups and not as individual people collecting it. And within the Exanvis project, we also developed a way for the people who collect the data to be able to visualize the information that they collected. So this is a local map. You don't see exactly the background, but people can go around and check that the recording match what they see on the map. And there is a whole technical system that supports it, such as a software that allow the visualization, maps that can be used in a remote place, and only the people that agree can do that. There is a software for designing the application, and so on. And the whole process, we are sharing it, of course, in an open access form. So there is a website where you can follow step by step the process of the data collection and how to run your own project. But also we shared it in different peer review publication in order to ensure legitimacy and acceptance of the methodology. And you can find this information. But what we have found in this project is that and that's a very important reason why we carried out. We demonstrated that even if you go to people who don't read and write, who have not used technology before, but you give appropriate support, you give appropriate care and respect to the people that you work with, anyone can create citizen science. Of course, it's expensive and complex and not easy to do, but it is possible. So if we can do that with the communities that we work with, you can surely do that with the community that live across the road. Second thing that we discovered is that co-production with such community can include really sophisticated and complex data collection. For example, with the Masai Mara, we have developed an app that includes over 170 types of different trees and objects that people collected, or in other cases, very complex processes of data collection in Ethiopia around a lot of very delicate polygons that describe ponds and area of watering. And people can understand that and can be involved in that. And because we carried it out in so many places, we have done that in 20 cases over the past 12 years. And it's basically demonstrating that this is not a fluke. It's not just that we put all the resources in just one case. We actually can now do it in different ways and with different communities. And that's where my claim is, that it's, if we can do it with these communities, then it's possible to do citizen science anywhere. So the summary of this talk is that it's got a potential at all levels of research, from applied to frontier. It's got the importance that we can support communities to carry it out, and its science is so important to be only for scientists to be involved. And as it's gained its place within policy, and you see that you can actually can tell if, for example, someone tell you, oh, you shouldn't do citizen science, that's really radical, or it's not relevant, you can say research funders, research policymakers, UNESCO, other people are seeing it as an important part of what science means in current society. And therefore, I should be part of it, and I should prepare myself to the science the way that it is. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I hope that that helps you in the context of all this fantastic presentation that we have seen.
Great, thank you very much, Miki. We'll give back the floor now to Ruben and to answer the questions that have come up in the chat.
Thank you very much to everyone. I'm going to also put everyone again back in the evidence, so all the speakers, and in the meanwhile, feel free to drop your question in the chat, or feel free to raise your hands. And for the moment, we have, I think one of the question has been about the, let me go back to the question list because we have so many. And the user Montserrat was inquiring about how do you address different motivation? Can you give examples? And I've seen that Florence and already have an exchange with the user. So if you are willing to get back and share with everyone the reply, or if you have any follow-up question, please do.
I don't necessarily have much to reply to, but another example I could give from our project in terms of maybe something more practical, how do you answer one of the motivation? Something that we've noticed a lot is that our citizens were extremely concerned about their personal exposure to air pollution. So of course we did measure that, but in addition to that, we provide them with a very detailed personal data report. So not just giving the numbers, but explaining the numbers as clearly as possible so that they can understand. So this, for example, another way of addressing one motivation for participants to be part of your project. Yes, that's the only thing I want to
add. Perhaps if I can just complete something.
Yeah.
What I did to address motivations is that I realized that my participant to my experimentation really wanted to learn and to have like they perhaps they wanted to read some papers, like they asked me a lot of references, for instance. They also as the goal was also the local urban plan in Paris. They also wanted to share their concerning. They were really concerned about the local urban plans. It was also urban question. So as it was linked. But I would say that they really wanted to learn and I also felt like to be a part of the scientific project was something very important to them. And that's also something that we can find as part of urban consultation, when people can learn things, and at the end, and it's a debate. I don't know if it's a debate in the science participatory world, but it's a debate in the participatory, democratic participatory world. What can we do at the end, for instance, of a citizen assembly or something like that, to perhaps give kind of a little diploma or something like that, who could make official the learnings, all the learnings, like we did when we were at the university or something like that. They really want to learn, and that's something they want to value also on their perhaps personal or professional careers. Or that's, I would say that's something that I noticed over the years.
Thank you. Then I have another question from NCA, which is kind of connecting to what I asked before. And for any of you who would prefer to reply, is like how one can get the trust of citizens to have them to participate in the scientific project. And then a follow-up question connected to this is also how scientists can convince parents to have their kids in their project. Do you have any experience or on that?
Well, if I can answer just very briefly, that's a question that I had at the beginning. I wanted children to participate too, because you know the city of today is also their city, because they're the generation of tomorrow. And it was very difficult for data regulation, the European data regulation, because if you want to involve children, you have to have their parents have to sign some documents to, well, in a very regulation way to protect yourself. So at the end, I was like, a PhD is in 3 years, so I don't have enough time. But if you have a lot of time, and also I was alone, because I had my PhD supervisor, but it's not a teamwork, it's not a team project. But I feel like if it's a team project, perhaps you would have more people on it, and more time, and perhaps more money. So perhaps it can be something to do, and I feel it would be very interesting So especially that's my field, especially in the natural participatory sciences.
Yeah, so absolutely, that's indeed one of the things that is now happening. That the ethics and the GDPR need to be considered very, very carefully. If you want to engage children, the one of the first thing to do is to approach the ethics committee of your organization and start having a conversation with them about what will you need to do in order to do that, because each country and each place will be differently. The second thing is really to try and team up with a researcher or a research group that is already carrying out such research. They would probably have very similar ethics application. They know what to put in place, and they might know how to do things and how to reach out. And that's a general thing about citizen science. I show you the example of what we're doing, and within a research group where there is a strong participatory activity, you can get into the type of co-production that I showed you. But in terms of how we train researchers, actually part of the reason why it is expensive is because new PhD students in the group during the Exanvis project were sent to join someone else. So just imagine sending someone all the way to the Congo Basin, basically so they can follow someone who is already doing that to understand how to carry out the project. So they're not thrown into the project new, they're actually learning from someone who is doing that. And that's a very core principle. If you are starting in citizen science and participatory research, it is best to join someone. I also, when I've done my first project 25 years ago, I had a lot of support of people who were doing that by then, 10 years, and they had a researcher that knew how to approach the community and bring them over. And I got really good guidance on how to do that. So that's why EXA and ECS and other networks are so important, because you can reach out to networks, and we might even be able later on in the process help you with mentoring and with guidance on how to get started properly on these things. So I kind of expanded a bit the question, but that will be my strong recommendation of identifying who you can team up with and then build on that.
Thank you. Claudia, please feel free to add.
Yeah, thank you. I also, for the recording and those that watch it later, wanted to add something that Stein, I don't know how to pronounce it, MSF put in the chat. To reach children or minors, you can reach out to schools and teachers. Sometimes what you plan to do in your project fits well with the current curriculum that teachers have to do. And citizen science projects having that many aspects, they can be multidisciplinary, so that also schools can address it from different parts. I don't know, I heard lately from a project on ants, and ants, they can represent, you can talk about ants in biodiversity topics, but also about how societies work. And this follows the logic, for example, that we also follow in the project. We want to reach out to those that are not yet involved in citizen science projects. So, and we said, for example, people that would not want to go to a museum, but rather to a public library. So instead of us going to the public library, we engage with a network of public libraries who they have the contact. So and this ties together with what Muki was saying of reaching the networks if you don't have the contacts yet.
Thank you very much. Then I have another question that Muki already started to reply on the chat, but I'm really curious to sort of enlarge a bit and go into more details. AI and the future of AI and citizen science. So what should we expect? What the future looks like? Are citizen science disappearing because of AI, or do you think we could be a nice collaboration between AI and citizen science and research in general?
So I'll expand because there are already several papers. I'll try while other people answer to put a link to one or two of the papers that talk about the collaboration. Actually, AI enhance citizen science. So an app called iNaturalist, which allow people to collect observations of biodiversity, is now also guiding you with the assistance of AI to recognize what it is that you collected. So it's actually offering you in a clever way what it is that you have observed. And that's, in a way, motivate people to collect more observation, because the tool is actually helping them to learn about observation in their area. The quality of data sets that you are creating for machine learning and AI is much more improved if you have a robust data set. And you can also even think about the ability, if you're creating a data set, you read a lot in the literature about training data sets on 5,000 images. Now think about getting into 50,000 images or classification, and you're starting to see that those are things that you can't do alone. You need to have other people. And those are just two examples of where AI can work together. So instead of kind of thinking that, again, machine will replace people, the collaboration is way more effective than just the machines.
And I have a question for Florence or Amélie, or both of you, if you're available. It's, how do you motivate citizens who are not concerned by air pollution or tree cutting?
Well, I was starting to answer. So urban. Well, I'm just going to answer just what I was starting to answer. So urban constellation and urban issues are also subject that motivate people. Well, during my experiment. So the hypothesis was also that is that when people aren't motivated by trees, they could be motivated by urban futures. So that was the bet of the experiment. And so yes, so I tried to motivate them with another subject, which is urban futures, and this is a wider issue.
Sorry, it's Khurana. Sorry, I asked the question. I wanted to explain more about the context that I asked this question. So in big cities, there is concern about air pollution and cutting the trees in the city. So we even in our city in Romania, we had this major protest against cutting some trees in the downtown area of the city. So it worked. But in another part of the city, in another part of the country, people are fighting. There are 2 or 3 people who are fighting to save a tree in the middle of a small town, and nobody else cares about that. So how do we motivate in those close and very small and isolated communities? How do we motivate also others to engage in issues like this, like in urban planning and air pollution? Because there are a lot of problems also in these communities. That's the context of my question.
Okay, if I can answer, or perhaps Florence. All right. Something that I realized over the months during my research is that there is a very important thing is information, and sometimes it's not enough. That's something that I really realized. Well, it's kind of a real situation, because we're all with all the social media, the smartphones and all, we have a lot of information every day. But at the end, I'm realizing that people even in Paris didn't know that the local urban plan was revised. So it's sometimes information is not there enough, and so the main, perhaps the first answer that I can give today is first information, and a very strong one. Like during this, perhaps in local communities, with several events, public meetings to explain how is it important to preserve trees, because well, I don't know if in this area there is a lot of heat island, but for the next decades, to preserve trees and to preserve biodiversity in some areas, it's going to be very important. So perhaps explain about ecosystem services and try to explain why it is so important for their well-being. to preserve trees and to preserve other species and the ecosystem in balance in general. So that's the first thing that I would perhaps say. And the perhaps another point, it would be to try to understand what motivates them in general. So sometimes it can be social events, sometimes it's I don't know, well, it can be mobile cars, for instance, or or some noise, or if there is a lot of several things, but in cities are very wide places, and there are always an issue that someone is going to be curious about or going to be interested about. So perhaps I would say that's kind of what I try to do with the experimentation. Say it's find another key point that could motivate them, and then join it with the science, the participant science system program that you would like to settle.
Thank you. Lucrina, do you have anything to add or everything?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Then I see that Pooja has raised the hand. Please go ahead with your question.
Thanks, Ruben. It's not a question. I just wanted to build upon what Amélie was talking about. I think that goes with every kind of research or science in general, that you have to understand the audience. You could be delivering the same message and information. And I think information and education has a slight difference, because with education, you're also trying to make the topics understood to the audience, right? So you sometimes have to speak their language in a way that they understand. And also what I observed in my research when I was, working on my PhD in nutrition, etc., was that everybody knows that good nutrition is good for health, but sometimes they need to know the deleterious effects. So instead of painting why something is good, sometimes people need to understand why what they're doing is bad, and that seems to engage them more and makes them more concerned. So just to build upon what Amélie already conveyed. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So I do not have any more question on the chat. Do you have any other question? Please raise your hand or drop in the chat.
I would like to ask this from anybody who would like to answer, because in general, we have seen that some researchers do struggle with resources, because they do want to engage with citizen science, but they lack maybe financial or supervisional resources. So for those scientists, young researchers who are interested, what are your suggestions, that from the young researchers who are already here working on it? Have you faced such challenges, and how have you tried to overcome these yourself? Florence, Amélie, Baptiste, anybody?
What I did is it was a real journey to find a grant for my PhD, to do my PhD. So during 1 year, there is a system in France called it's called CIFRE. It's something that's what I said during my presentation, because we are in a collaboration with a little firm called In Fabrique de la Ville, and it's a contract with the state, and so the grant is separated in two, with 70% financed by the state and funds by the state, and 30% by the little firm. And so it's I help them with other issues that they're dealing with as part of their activities, and on the other side, I'm doing my researches, well, during the time that I have left, and I would say that yes, it's a very difficult point. It's in France, it's something that we're facing a lot, the difficulties to find grants and to finance those projects, but we have some organization some public organization that can fund those kind of research project, and I would say that there is more and more partnership with the private sectors, with universities. We're trying to build some bridge between the private sectors, universities, and all to try to do like kind of a win-win research project that would also help the private sector to enhance their work on those subjects, or because they are also facing a lot of challenges. And so that's sometimes it's a win-win strategy to help them. That's what I'm doing. I'm helping them with their issue that they're facing, and that's sometimes the same issue that we are facing. And so we are trying to think all together to find some solution. And sometimes it's really